If you aren't aware, the development of 83 has been temporarily paused until further notice, because instead the devs are working on IGI Origins, which is a game that some of you probably aren't aware of in terms of the series and the fact that these devs were working on both games at the same time. There are some possible reasons as to why this is, but one of them is because they are tasked with converting the whole game to Unreal Engine 5. I don't know the first thing about game engines, but I imagine it's a tough task. But I also should say that I'm not directing this to AMG. I'd imagine it's the publisher that's pulling the strings and giving them orders. Now, I'm just gonna have to stop the video right there and add some director's commentary. If I sound weird, it's because it's 4 AM and 5 degrees in my garage, and I do apologize. But a friend of mine has sent me some detective level stuff, but I do mention throughout this video that Toadman Interactive is the publisher of AMG. However, some of the stuff that he sent me says otherwise, and I want to know what your thoughts are on this. So we know that AMG was acquired by Toadman in 2019, but in January the 7th, they relinquished control and a person that works for AMG became the new director. And even on Toadman's site, it says that AMG became their own company under EG7. So the real question here is Toadman still the publisher? How do they factor in? Because it clearly says that AMG is under EG7's control now. Now, lots of people are conflicted on how they feel on this. Some are unaffected, some are treating it as if 83 has become vaporware. Now, me personally, yes, I'm greatly upset because if it released in 2022, I would have literally dropped everything just to pump out content for this game, but bitching and whining isn't going to change the reality of the situation, even if we might be looking at a 2024 release. And the reason why I say this is because AMG's publisher's owner, it gets confusing, but EG7 have said in their report of a 2023 and 2024 release date, and I assume IGI will be out in 2023, and once all the manpower can be redirected back to 83, then it will be 2024. But this also means 83 will most likely be running on UE5, which means whatever they've worked on for 83 currently will also need to be converted to UE5. But I have put timestamps in the video description for your convenience, and I also want to hear how you genuinely feel about this matter, because some people are genuinely upset and some people just don't care, which is fair enough. But for those unaware, 83 is a combined arms FPS set in 1983, because apparently that was when the Earth was the closest to World War III. But I consider 83 to be the next step after Rising Storm 2 Vietnam, not in terms of the setting, but more so on the gameplay style, that being the perfect mix of realism and fun, and it just won't feel similar to games like Squad and Hell Let Loose. I know some people might be offended by me saying that those games are boring, but I've got a short attention span. I like to have realism, but it needs to be fast paced to keep me engaged with the game. But this is specifically why I play games such as Red Orchestra 2 over Hell Let Loose. I like the World War II theme, but I just prefer the gameplay style of Red Orchestra 2 because it's just gritty and dark whilst also being fast paced, and that gameplay style is able to keep me engaged long enough. Obviously, those games that I mentioned aren't for everyone, so please don't abuse me in the comments. Also, contrary to what people say, it's not Rising Storm 3, but it will take inspiration from past games that AMG have worked on nonetheless. There is supposedly going to be 3 factions, that being the USSR, UK, and USA at launch. The game is primarily focused on the European theater, but after launch, if everything goes well, we might see the introduction of Germany as well as Czechoslovakia of all countries, but that's all hypothetical. But you will get era-appropriate transport and attack helicopters, also tanks, trucks, and cars. They said they would reveal at a later date specifically what those are, but in their latest TTGS video, which came out in January, Jesus Christ, time flies, but they were at the Bovington Tank Museum trying to get audio clips for the game, so I'm sure whatever they do in terms of tank development will be as authentic as possible. But from what I've seen, tank interiors won't be modeled in this game, and apparently in RO2 it was such a monumental task to actually do that. Apparently each interior took around 6 months to do, but honestly, whoever was responsible for doing the interiors of tanks in RO2 did a fantastic job. They are so freaking sick. It is possible there will be multiple tanks per side. Not much is known about how they'll be implemented, but there is the possibility of being able to take enemy transport vehicles, and hopefully an abundant amount of tomfoolery occurs as a result. But in regards to maps, it is known that the Duga radar array, I'm sorry if I butchered that pronunciation, but that is planned, and in real life it looks really cool, and it's in the Chernobyl region in Ukraine. There's also the Fulda Gap, which is in Germany, but I feel like I should mention like some sort of misinformation misinformation that I see people spread, and that is, for starters, Tripwire has literally nothing to do with 83. AMG are the people that are developing it. Now, AMG were contracted by Tripwire to make RS2, and when the contract was up, they basically said adios amigos, and as a result, AMG had no parent company to more or less fund them. Apparently, AMG did pitch the idea of 83 to Tripwire, but they were shot down due to cost. And this is why they released the trailer back in 2019 in hopes of getting a publisher, which they eventually did, called Toadman Interactive. But one thing I see people debating, is this the right decision? And some of the arguments that people have put forth is that AMG is known for the work on RS1 and 2, which is why when IGI gets picked up after being tossed around between a couple of companies, some people feel it doesn't make sense to focus on a game that the initial community doesn't like or are aware of, and some people might even feel betrayed as a result. Like, can you imagine if I just started turning this channel into, like, I don't know, a cooking channel, something completely irrelevant to tactical shooters, and you might not give a crap. But another thing that I see people saying is that they don't personally know anyone that knows what IGI is. I didn't even know what it was until recently, but this can be attributed to the fact that there is no overlap between the two communities. IGI is a single player game that originates before some of you and even myself were born, and it's a stealth-based tactical shooter, whereas 83 is in no way similar. Really, the only reason why that I'm interested in IGI is because, one, it's made by AMG and I would want to see what they do with the game, also because the game is supposed to be a tactical shooter and, you know, I like tactical things to an extent. But I have seen a couple of hypotheses, I don't know how to pronounce that, as to why this decision is being made. The first being that IGI is coming to consoles and 83 is still undecided on that topic, but also the fact that 83 is still in a niche genre of shooters, because in games such as Hell Let Loose, Ready or Not, basically anything that requires some form of communication and cohesion to be effective is niche. Because especially for games such as Hell Let Loose, a common thing that I see is the Battlefield players will say that, oh, you gotta try Hell Let Loose, it's like a hardcore Battlefield, and even other people say that, but I disagree with that. And as a result, you have people that come into Hell Let Loose and there's no form of communication or cohesion, and they think that they can just go off and do their own thing. But apparently 83 is in a niche smaller than IGI, and I kinda disagree with that to an extent, and I'm gonna back up my claims with actual facts and logic. First off, IGI being as old as it is, apparently has a cult following. But from a community perspective, when we compare 83 to IGI, in regards to the YouTube channel, the Discord, and the Steam followers, it's mostly in 83's favor, except for a couple of videos that were done on IGI Origins. However, this could be chalked up to IGI being more SEO friendly, because when you do Google 83, I mean, a lot of different things come up, and you always need to specify 83 the game. But while tactical shooters are still a smallish niche these days, they definitely are increasing due to AAA studios continuously screwing up and leading people to games such as Hell Let Loose. But this leads me onto Steam's leaked spreadsheet about game ownership. Now, I must say this doesn't take into account free weekends, but in 2018, before I even owned RS2 or even know what it was, it had 952,431 people owning it, and this is all a year after launch. I wouldn't consider this niche if nearly 1 million people are aware and probably played RS2. Even if we look at RO2, since its release, it had 3.5 million people own the game. And now in 2022, where more people have capable computers, tactical shooters being on the rise, and the lack of Cold War shooters, I honestly believe 83 could dominate this space by bringing in the unique gameplay and setting. I should also mention that Squad, as of 2019, had sold over 1 million copies, and that's a game where you get to LARP as a soldier in the US Army. I wouldn't consider this a very, very small niche game. I mean, yeah, sure, it's still niche, but it's not as small as people would claim it to be. But I am interested to see how EG7 determined these potential sales projections other than chalking it up to console sales, because chances are you watching this video will buy 83. But I should also mention that Toadman bought out AMG entirely, and part of this deal was that they work on IGI, which they were doing simultaneously with 83 until recently, where they were probably told to focus on IGI. But what I'm trying to say is that some people have come to me and told me that they don't buy the niche argument that is being presented, especially when compared to IGI Origins, which is in a niche of itself. The original IGI games were stealth-based tactical shooters. They were in a niche. They weren't like big, explosive, Doom style. Okay, maybe not Doom, it's a little later than that, but games that were full of action. Because we've talked about the Viet Cong game series on this channel, and that was in a niche of itself. That was a tactical shooter back in the day, and it catered to people who were interested in those more difficult type of games compared to Call of Duty, which was a lot more easier and accessible. But one thing that's been said is that market projections are in IGI's favor. There's nothing we can really do about that other than pray IGI is as good as they think it is. Because early 2022, I'd say I was at a 98% confidence in 83 being released, but now that IGI is being the main focus, I've dropped down to a 90%, and if IGI doesn't do as well as they hope it does, then I'm probably going to drop down to a 50%. But one more argument that I see people put forth, I'm not putting this forth, is that the market of IGI is mostly Southeast Asia, and from my experience doing an IGI video in the past, over 50% of the people watching that were from India and SCA countries. And I'm willing to bet AMG and whoever is in charge of their YouTube channel to show me the audience analytics, and I bet my left nut that SCA countries will be the highest audience for their IGI videos. Also, another thing that I see people saying is that people in these regions probably don't have the capability to play a UE5 game or even IGI Origins. Those aren't my words, I'm just going based off what people tell me. But of course, my predictions and your predictions have no backing whatsoever. Only AMG and their boss's boss truly know how well a game might hypothetically perform in a market. But all in all, if you want a Cold War setting game, you have After Conflict as well as Arma Reforger, yet the development of that game might be halted by the time 83 is released. If you want a new Vietnam War game, you can check out Burning Lands, which will be similar to Hell Let Loose and Squad, but hopefully will be its own thing. You also have Squad's Vietnam mod, which will hopefully be out by 2024, but all in all, this is just a horrible turn of events, and there's nothing we can really do about it other than wait and play something else in the meantime. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, please do check out the video that is on screen. Also, do consider leaving a like, subscribing, and sharing the video with your friends. Anyways, my name is Tan2, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.